Hello and welcome to Byju's IAS. Wish you all a happy and a prosperous Onam. Let's get started and look into the first article. The first article is about premature retirement. The Department of Personnel and Training has issued a notification. According to this notification, it has asked all the departments to review the service records of the employees who have been working with the government for nearly 30 years. They'll be looked at whether they have been effective when it comes to the administration. Are there any charges of corruption, or how is their service record with respect to the employee? All this will be checked, and in case they are found to be ineffective and they are not productive over a period of time, and in case there are any charges of corruption, such people will be asked to retire prematurely, and that is in the interest of public. What is the law or the framework that lets the central government perform this review process? The employees performance review is conducted under the fundamental rule 56J and L, and also under the rule 48(1) of B of the Central Civil Service Pension Rules of 1972. This gives the central government the absolute power, and this gives the central government the right to retire a person prematurely if it is in the interest of the public. As provided, the appropriate authority can also retire an official by giving a notice of not less than 3 months in writing, or 3 months pay and allowance as well. So who are those people who can be prematurely retired? Those are the people who have been found to be ineffective, they do not have integrity towards the service of the government, and they have been corrupt in the process. Such people will be asked to retire. Any person who has attained an age of 50 or 55, or he has also attained 30 years of service in the government of India, such people belonging to the group A as well as group B can come under this fold. So they will be reviewed and all the precautionary measures would be taken, and the government, in case it realizes that they are inefficient or corrupted, such people might be asked to retire in the interest of public. How does this review process work? The Ministry of Personnel has asked all the departments to maintain a register. This register will basically have a review about every single employee who has attained the age of 50 or 55, or even crossed 30 years of experience. So they'll be scrutinized at the beginning of every quarter, and this will be taken up by a senior officer, who can be the senior officer in a department, or it can be the ministry or the cadre controlling authority as well. The broad criteria to be followed by the review committee while making all these recommendations to this particular register, adding them into this particular register, is doubtful integrity, ineffectiveness, and lack of competence with respect to updating times. What we currently live in that particular area, where we have to upgrade ourselves and we also have to make sure we are contributing to the glory of India. But unfortunately, there would be few people who may not be able to add on with respect to their competency. Such people should be out in the name of public interest. So the entire service record and the annual performance appraisal report of that particular government servant should be considered while putting their names into this particular register. Similarly, his work and performance in different ministries, different departments, new innovations that this person has come up with, and all those submissions and reports made with respect to various departments should also be considered when we are considering this review under this registry. So what is the significance of this move? Basically, when the ministry has notified, this will strengthen the very idea of administrative machinery. Why? Because all those inefficient, all those incompetent will be weeded out of the system, and what we will have is only the efficient ones. And in the near future, what we will also have is these administrative personnel will not only believe in status quo, but they will also start upgrading themselves as well, and this will ultimately help India. It will also cleanse the system of all the deadwoods, and at the same time corruption in the system will also reduce as well. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this article. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about the ethical issues with respect to the media. When it comes to the media, it is called as the fourth pillar of democracy. We have the other three pillars of democracy, which is the legislature, the executive, and judiciary. What do the three organs of the state do? Basically, they have checks and balances to keep everyone accountable to the system. The fourth pillar is the media, which also keeps accountability with respect to all these three organs of the state. The media is thus called the fourth pillar in democracy. The media acts as a guardian of the public interest. How? It acts as a bridge between the people as well as the state. All the information with respect to the activities of the state will ultimately be delivered to the people through the media, whether it is national news or it is international news, whether it is poverty related or it is unemployment, whether it is economic, political, cultural, social. These information will be delivered from the state to the people of India, and that is why they are called as the guardians of public interest in democracy. Therefore, the media acts as the eyes, the ears, and the very thought process of the state. Now, let's look at the constitutional angle. In India, freedom of the press has been treated as part of the freedom of speech and expression guaranteed by Article 19 of 1 of A of the Constitution of India. The same has also been upheld by the Supreme Court of India. In Brijbhushan and others versus the State of Delhi and Sakal Papers Limited versus the Union of India, it has held that the right to freedom of press is present under Article 19 of 1 of A. But this particular right is not absolute. There are some restrictions that are imposed with respect to the freedom of speech and expression. What are these? Reasonable restrictions can be placed on this right in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India, the security of the state, public order, decency or morality, in relation to contempt of the court, defamation or incitement to an offense. Hence, freedom of media is not an absolute freedom. So, as we have known in the past, that this particular freedom also has some restrictions, and certain restrictions can be imposed by the state as well. So, what is the importance of media? The importance of the media is that it keeps all the people informed about the daily activities that is happening world over. The national importance as well as the international importance. They serve the people with the news, they serve the people with ideas, information on all matters of public interest in a fair, accurate and impartial manner. This is the very foundation of objective journalism. This is what is professionalism. This is what they are entitled to do. This is what they are supposed to do as well. But what we see of late is that media is not focusing on national important issues, but they are focusing on issues focused only on TRP. Let's take the simple example of Sushant Singh case, one of the talented actors of Bollywood who recently passed away. Initial investigation suggests it was a suicide, with many accusing it to be a murder. The case was also transferred to the Central Bureau of Investigation. This case would be investigated and the culprit should also be punished if it is a murder. So in case it is contrary to the original opinion, and if it happens to be a murder, if someone has abated this particular murder, whoever has committed such an act will be coming under the law books, and penal provisions should be enforced on such a person. No doubt about it. But what is the media doing of late? The media is focusing too much on Sushant Singh case while we have many other issues when it comes to the national importance. What we have to focus is on all those aspects and not only on Sushant Singh case. This also raises couple of issues and concerns as well. One is about the media and due process. Second is about the violation of privacy of another individual. And third is a larger issue, the real issues of national importance not covered by the media. So what are we looking at? We will look at all these three processes and we will try and understand what is the ethical dilemma that which we currently see with respect to the media. When it comes to the media and due process, if there are people who are responsible, found to be guilty, they should be punished after an investigation has been conducted as per the due process of law. But what does the media do? It tries to influence the outcome of a particular case. Ideally, it is the investigating officers who have to investigate it, and these people will put it in front of the court and the lawyers will will fight their cases, and ultimately it is the court who will decide whether that person is committed a crime or not. But what is happening of late, it is the media which is also becoming the investigating officer, it is the media which is becoming the court, and it is also declaring and pronouncing whether that particular person is guilty or not. Is it right, is the first question that is being asked. There are also some of the channels which also say they have data and statistics. One is from the enforcement director, the other is from the CBI. In case they are getting such an information, how are they getting this information from the government officials is what needs to be pondered. When such a call is made by the media, the authorities of the government of India will also have to listen to this particular claim. In case it is proved to be false, all the legal actions will have to be initiated against the media houses. And at the same time, in case it is proved to be right, how did this information, which happens to be from the public office, went to the media houses is what needs to be checked as well. Ultimately, these investigating officers, investigating agencies is ultimately under the control of the government. Such delicate data, how is that it is going to the media houses is what needs to be checked, is the first major issue. The second major issue is with respect to the privacy and reputation of a person. Let's take for example, in the present case of Sushant Singh Rajput, there is another person who is being accused of, or there can be some number of people who may be accused of. If it is proved, the law will take its course, and such a person who is being accused of will ultimately be behind the bars as well. But what is also happening in media of late is we are accusing him violating the privacy and reputation of a person. In fact, in case it is proved in the near future that it is not this person who's committed this act, the media might also apologize. But look at the reputation consequences of this. The person would have suffered a damage to the reputation, and his dignity would have been lost because of the media trial. And the third issue is that we are not focusing on real issues. The real issues are being sidelined and non-issues are being represented as the real news, while real issues are being sidelined. So what are the real issues here? The real issue is the pandemic. The real issue is about the health issue. The real issue is about the border issue with China. The real issue is about number of migrant workers who are suffering because they do not have jobs, because they are suffering from hunger. Instead of focusing on all these issues, the media is focusing only for the TRPs. Because it is focusing on TRP, because it is focusing on profit maximization, the very foundation, the fourth pillar of democracy is not working in a fruitful manner, is what this article is speaking about. So basically, the objective journalism, which should have been the idea, is now replaced with profits and agenda setting, and also media trial as well. Therefore, in the near future, the media should focus on all those issues that are relevant to the common man. It can be with respect to the society, politics, or with respect to the drawbacks of the administration. So the fourth pillar of democracy should also have a well defined code and work within that boundary, within that contours, and not become the jury, the judge, the investigating officer, and also bring harm to the reputation of another person, is what this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. This article here is speaking about World Bank Doing Business report. It was initially published in the year 2003. The report reviews the business regulations and their enforcement in that particular country where it is investing, whether there is business atmosphere or not. The report looks at the regulatory environment. It looks at whether the medium and small term industries, and whether the business conducting activities from starting up this particular industry to paying taxes and addressing all the issues and grievances of that particular company which is working in this very country. This index is made of 10 indicators of starting business, getting electricity, dealing with construction permits, registering property, protecting investors, getting credit, employing workers, trading across borders, paying taxes, enforcing contracts, and resolving insolvency. So higher ranking of the country in this particular list means that there is a very good regulatory environment and there is more conducive and favorable conditions for establishing business in this particular area and operation of firms in that very region. And in case the ranking of this particular country is very low, it means the environment for the business development is not suitable in this very region. So this will also make sure higher the ranking in this particular business report means that business personnel and multinational organizations would come to this region to start off with their business plans. So more investment, more technology, more job opportunities and investment in this very region. Why are we discussing about World Bank and doing business report? That is because the World Bank has now paused the publication of its annual doing business report to investigate whether the data which is being given, the ranking that which is being given is right or wrong. Why? Because there are few people who are also saying that there is data collection irregularities as well as methodological issues. So because the data that they have collected they currently feel is wrong, there could be an issue with respect to its ranking. So the World Bank has now said they would do a systematic review and understand what is this ranking process all about, where they have actually gone wrong in understanding it, and will also have one of the independent auditor groups which will investigate the collection and the review process. This is what is the present context, but what we also have to focus is in specific reference to India. As we initially discussed, when it comes to the doing business report, it is basically about investment in another country. Higher the ranking, the more would be the investment is what is being generally projected. So India accordingly has sought to improve its ease of doing business index ranking as a means to attract the investments. In the last 5 years, when we consider this particular ranking, India has boosted its image and more investments was assumed to be coming to India. The initiative also means that India had taken raising the manufacturing sector share in GDP to 25% from the current 16 to 17% and creating 100 million additional jobs in the manufacturing sector by 2022. But now the question is, since this investigation by the World Bank is put on hold, whether the ranking with respect to India and other major countries and its improvement, is it right or wrong, is the first question that we have to raise. The second important question is India is planning to increase the GDP of the manufacturing sector to about 25%. It is currently at about 16 to 17%. What this also means that India will have to make huge investments, and that is what India is projecting in the last 5 years. But is it actually being implemented on the ground is the second question. Why? Because the current 16 to 17% is still very stagnant when it comes to the manufacturing sector. And what the article and the author say is because of this stagnation, there is resultant of job loss as well. There was already job loss that was taking place, and with this particular investment going down, what we will also see is more job losses in the near future. Then this particular article also speaks about India's import dependence on China, which has also shot up as well, and at the same time there are many shortcomings when it comes to the design and implementation of this very index. As we initially discussed, India's ranking was increasing over a period of time in the last 5 years, but when it comes to the index calculation, their focus was majorly on Delhi and also on Mumbai. Might be these cities are important for them, might be these cities have very good infrastructure support, might be they might have also a very good labor laws as well. What about other cities? Let's take the example of Bengaluru, Chennai, Hyderabad or Kolkata. Did this particular index look into all these major cities as well as tier 2 cities which are the manufacturing hub? No, says this particular article. And at the same time, when it comes to this particular analogy of indexing and also taking the inputs, Delhi and Mumbai was considered. And who were the people who were considered? It might be industrialists, or it can be accountants, or it can be brokers. But who should have ideally been checked? It is the new entrepreneurs who are planning to establish their industries. Such people should have been inquired. So instead of inquiring the new entrepreneurs, already established accountants and brokers were checked by the index, says this very article. In the near future, in case the index is coming into picture and they're planning to reform, all this will have to be changed, says the author. Then there is the question of labor reforms as well. It is generally believed that deregulation of labor, liberal labor laws increase the doing business index. But whom is it benefiting? They say that liberalization of the labor laws is very important and this will also boost up the ranking of the business in that country. But whom is it benefiting? Is it not benefiting only the businessmen, and it is at the cost of the labor force in India? When you can actually hire and fire them, this also means that the labor laws become flexible, and this also means it is the labor force which is the major sufferer, says this article. So in the near future, the World Bank, if it is coming up with a new ranking model or it is reviewing this particular process of indexing, it has to come up with new initiatives, new idea, and how it is taking this very statistics is what this article all about. Now let's look into the next article. From the last 1 week, we have been focusing on how countries like United States of America, countries like South Korea and Japan are planning to move its industries which are operating in China to different countries. What this article speaks about, it says that one such country that all these industries are planning to look at is India. But what this article speaks is in terms of a negative tinge. Why? Because this article says that in case these countries are planning to move, they will look at other options and might not look at India, says this article. And at the same time, it also gives certain advantages with respect to India, but it weighs more in terms of China as well. Let's look at arguments put forward by the author. The author currently goes on to say that there are some advantages with respect to India. So what are these advantages? There are no Indian government hackers when it comes to the stealing of foreign companies' information. When it comes to China, China has official hackers who are more than 1 lakh in number. China uses these hackers to get all the secrets of the foreign companies as well as foreign organizations as well. India might not be using Indian government hackers to steal the foreign company secrets is the first key argument and an advantage with respect to India. So what does China do? China steals this information, gets this information, reverse engineers it, and also gives a product which happens to be a duplicate of the very same product. India might not do that, says this very article. The second important advantage for India is that whenever there is a company which is operating in China, China uses some of the coercive tactics. They do not have the freedom of expression. They cannot speak against the government. That is not there in India. Why? Because we are a democracy. Industries operating in India of foreign origin might also speak to the government of India. They might also go to the judiciary as well. They can also put it across in media as well. Such is the nature in India, which is not the same with respect to the coercive politics run by the Communist Party of China in China, says the second argument. These are the advantages with respect to India. This is why companies may come to India, but actually the reality is different, says the author. What does the author say when it comes to China? China is a huge country. It also has the Communist Party of China, which also makes sure that there are plans, schemes and programs which is implemented as it wants. The same might not happen in India because of democracy. There might be pressure groups which may not allow the companies to operate, or as we initially discussed, there is the concept of not in my backyard. That is not there with respect to China. If the government decides, the same will be implemented when it comes to China. We also have another advantage when it comes to China. What is it? That is with respect to huge lands, that which is accommodated to the manufacturing sector. They have the special economic zones, they have specialized industrial zones. They are usually massive in number, and these manufacturing entities provide the required logistics, they provide the research, they are also gelled up with the universities, and they also provide the skilled labor required for the manufacturing processes. But India does not provide these kind of support, says the author. And at the same time, when it comes to the skilling, there is huge number of people that is required for this manufacturing setup. Such is provided to the manufacturing companies in China, the same is not present in India, says the author. What is the way forward? The author of this article gives three important suggestions with respect to the government of India. All those companies which are leaving China, planning to move to a different country, should not look at other options but instead have to look at India. So what are these three measures? Currently, what the government will have to do is to establish industrial centers and the southeast part of India. So what will this do? This will connect directly with the southeast part of Asia as well. So what will happen? The logistics cost will be reduced and there will be development of industrial centers in this very region. So irrespective of which party is in power in the southern part of India, what the government should do is establish these centers so that we have more exports, more understanding with the southeast part of Asia from the southeast part of India. The next important factor is with respect to the policy framework. Whenever the government of India is coming up with a policy framework, it should ideally be transparent, it should be predictable, and in case it is making a consultation, it has to speak to these industrial bodies, take their input, ultimately implement this very framework. So the government should make sure that it is taking the ideas and viewpoints of the industrial bodies. India has also taken number of steps when it comes to the approval from the central government. What is happening? The number of steps for the approval is comparatively reduced and the intra-department queries and all these issues have also been addressed. In the near future, they should also come up with a similar body in the PMO's office such that these approval process is enhanced, says the author. So if all these initiatives are taken by the central government, we would have a precedent where these companies from China might not look at other options but instead come to India, says the author. But for the rest of the analysis, you can look into the past 1 week of CNA where we have discussed the very same issue. Now let's look into some of the preliminary practice questions. Kandamal Haladi is a variety of turmeric indigenous to the state of Rajasthan, West Bengal, Odisha or Gujarat. The answer to this is Odisha. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. So kindly remember, this is an agricultural product which has its own healing capacity and also known for its aroma. This Kandamal Haldi, for which GI tag has been received, is a pure organic product. Tribals who grow this particular type of turmeric do it without applying fertilizer or pesticides, and they have a very good aroma and they also have the medicinal properties as well. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to the National Commission for Backward Classes. It is a statutory body under the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. The Commission investigates and monitors all matters relating to safeguards provided for the socially and educationally backward classes and presents the report directly to the Parliament. Which of the above statements are correct? The answer to this is none. Why? That is because it is not a statutory body, instead it is a constitutional body. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. This article here is speaking about the SC/ST community and the subcategorization within SC/ST community, which we have discussed on 28th. Kindly look into it. So this National Commission for Backward Classes was initially a statutory body, but now it has been accorded a constitutional status. The constitutional status was given through the Constitutional 102nd Act of 2018. The commission consists of a chairperson, vice chairperson and 3 other members. The commission investigates and monitors all matters relating to the safeguards provided for socially and educationally backward classes. But this is presented to the President of India and he then hands it over to the Parliament. It is not directly given to the Parliament, but first it is given to the President of India. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following are the advantages of roll-on, roll-off train service? It reduces accidents on the road, it facilitates the large-scale movement of goods, it reduces pollution. The answer to this is 1, 2 and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. What is this Ro-Ro train service? What we usually see is all these trucks travel on the road from the source to the destination. Instead of they traveling on the road, what we currently have is all these loaded trucks directly carried by the railway wagons. The first ever Ro-Ro service in India was carried out by the Konkan Railway. So what are the advantages? The RoRo service reduces the number of accidents as these trucks are not on roads. It improves the safety, and at the same time it also saves the fuel when it comes to this particular RoRo service. And at the same time it ensures faster transport of essential goods, perishable food items, and small cargo can also be transported from the source to the destination at a faster pace as well. Because these trucks are also not traveling on the roads, this also helps in reducing the pollution level as well, and at the same time the cost of that particular travel also reduces over a period of time. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this issue. Now let's look into the next practice question. With reference to the Chanpatna toys, which of the following statements are correct? It has got the geographical indication status from the state of Karnataka. The origin of wood toys dates back to the period of Hyder Ali. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is one only. Why? Because the origin of the wooden toys dates back to the period of Tipu Sultan and it is not Hyder Ali. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements. The Narmada River originates on the western flank of Amarkantak Plateau. The Narmada and the Sun River flow in trough faults and there is lack of alluvial and deltaic deposits in these rivers. Which of the above statements are correct? It is asking for the correct statement. So the answer to this is one only. Why? Because it is not the sun which flows, but instead it is the Tapi River. Why have we taken this practice question? Because of the reference given under this article. Now let's look into the next practice question. An artificial light orbiting around the sun does not fall down. This is so because the attraction of the earth provides the necessary acceleration for its motion. Now let's look into the mains practice question. Today we have two ethics questions, so we have taken a lot of effort. So make sure that you are writing all these answers and commenting and what steps that you would be taking in case you are in such a position. So the first question, Indian civil service is the steel frame of the country, playing a key role in implementing policies and programs for public welfare. They dedicate themselves to the cause of the citizens and renew their commitments to public service and excellence. It is also reported that honest civil servants who expose corruption in the system are subject to transfers from their post to remote places as punishment posting. This could have adverse impact on their performance and can also disturb the mental construct of the officer and his or her family. Frequent transfers may thus put their family to the edge, who may ask these officers to compromise with the party in power. What are the possible options available with the officer? How should they handle this issue? Discuss. Please write this particular answer, put out your views and also say what would you do in case you are put in such a scenario. The second question, reporting imprecisely in the interest of creating sensational news violates media ethics and due process. Substantiate. Please write all your answers on the comment section. Peer review. Come up with constructive criticism. This is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.